Hi, I'm Noah, 35, and I thought I finally found my way back into the family when I handed my parents the deed to a $1.2 million mountain estate for their vow renewal. 2 weeks later, I got a text from my cousin. Your dad rewrote the will. You're not in it anymore. Asterisk the idea started on a foggy Tuesday afternoon in February, the kind where nothing quite feels real. I was sipping black coffee out of a chip mug, scanning listings out west, looking for something big, something permanent. Something that said you belong here. It had been almost 4 years since I'd moved to Chicago after my last big falling out with my father. I say last like it was dramatic, but it wasn't. He just stopped calling. Birthday, silence. Promotion, nothing. When I told him over the phone that I'd gotten engaged, he said, then changed the subject. A few months later, I called to tell him the wedding was off, and he didn't ask why. That was us. We were a string of missed chances pretending to be a relationship. But I kept trying. My therapist said it was probably attachment trauma. I called it optimism. So when their 40-year vow renewal came around, I wanted to make a gesture so big they couldn't ignore it. I'd been saving for years, ever since the startup I joined early went public. I wasn't rich, but I was don't check the menu rich. Pay cash for a mountain home rich, if I played it right. And I did. I found a place near Lake Arrowhead, wraparound deck, forest views, enough room for the whole family to gather. I paid in full. In their name. The plan was simple. I'd fly out, surprise them a week before the renewal, spend time together in the house, maybe even feel like a son again. I imagined my dad shaking my hand with that half nod he gave when he was proud. I pictured my mom crying happy tears. Instead, I found my father in the study, red pen in hand, crossing out names on his will like it was a grocery list. I didn't say anything at first. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was an old draft. Maybe he was updating the language. Then I saw it. My name, scratched out, in favor of someone else. My cousin Troy. Let me explain. Troy is fine. He's one of those guys who never leaves a family function without a doggy bag and a subtle dig. He works in real estate. Smells like aftershave and self-promotion. My dad's always had a soft spot for him, mostly because Troy golfs, hunts, and calls my father sir. They have matching belt buckles. It's weird. I stood there in the doorway of the study like a ghost. My father didn't even flinch. You weren't supposed to see that, he said without turning around. Yeah, I replied, heart pounding. Clearly, he capped the pen, stood up slowly. He didn't look guilty. He looked relieved. Like this was something he'd been meaning to say for a while. I didn't think you'd notice, he added. The will. Or that I don't matter to you. He winced, just slightly. Don't be dramatic. You're doing well. You don't need anything. That was the moment. The sentence that snapped something in me clean in half. You don't need anything. Not love. Not legacy. Not connection. Just assets. As if being successful disqualified me from being his son, I walked out. My mom caught up with me in the hallway. No, she said softly, touching my arm. Please don't make this into a thing. A thing. I laughed, sharp and bitter. I just bought you $1 million home. She flinched. We didn't ask for that. No, I said. You just took it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the deck overlooking the mountains I thought would be our new family home, and realized I'd been nothing but a benefactor in my own family. A visitor with a wallet. When the vow renewal ceremony came, I didn't show. I sent a text, enjoy the view. 2 days later, I started the process of reversing the title transfer. Turns out, I'd planned for contingencies. The trust structure had a clause. Something about intent of use. My father may have written me out of the will, but he hadn't read the fine print. That mountain home. It might not be mine anymore, but it sure as hell wasn't theirs either. Asterisk after I left the mountain estate, I didn't go home. I checked into a mid-range hotel an hour down the hill. The kind with faded carpets and an ice machine that sounded like a dying whale. I sat on the bed for an hour, fully dressed, phone in hand, waiting for anyone to call. No one did. Not my father. Not my mother. Not Troy. They were apparent. My sister Lily texted me once, and neutral hey, are you okay? But when I replied with a 5-paragraph emotional landslide, she didn't answer. That was her specialty, low investment concern. A single slice of empathy on a paper plate, The title reversal took 3 business days to initiate. I'd built the legal structure for the estate through a firm in San Diego. And when I called them and explained what happened, the associate on the line didn't even sound surprised. "We see this more than you'd think," she said. "Families gutting each other over estates they didn't pay for." "Worse," she replied. "At least you have a trust clause." The clause in question was a conditional occupancy clause. Basically, I had created the trust in their name, but tied it to continued equitable family use, meaning if they deviated from the intent, say, by removing me from the family legacy, the asset could revert to the original grantor. It was a backup plan I didn't think I'd need. But something in me, even back then, hadn't trusted them completely. Isn't that something? The part of me that still loved them had to work around the part that expected them to betray me. On day 4, I drove back up the mountain. Not to talk, just to see. The house looked the same, sleek wood paneling, stone fireplace visible through the big front window. There were 2 cars in the driveway. My dad's truck, Troy's Lexus. The license plate frame said number 1 Realtor. I stood at the bottom of the driveway for 10 full minutes. Then I drove past without stopping. Later that night, I got a call from my Aunt Beverly, my dad's older sister. I hadn't spoken to her in years, not since she called me soft-spoken like it was an insult. But this time, her voice was measured, curious. "Noah," she said, "I heard you gave them a house." Past tense, I said. "What happened?" "You ever feel like you're the only person in your family who remembers what loyalty is?" She made a noncommittal sound, somewhere between a sigh and a grunt. "You always were a sensitive one." I almost hung up. But something about the way she said it made me pause. Because it didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like regret. "You know he rewrote the will," I said. "I heard," she replied. "I also heard he's telling people you stormed off because you didn't get a bigger piece of the pie." My laugh was involuntary. "That tracks. He thinks love is a transaction." She was quiet for a beat. Then, softly, "He didn't used to be like this, you know." I bit down on the reply I wanted to give. "Then why didn't any of you stop him?" And instead said, "Thanks for calling." The next morning, I met with my lawyer in person. Her name was Maya, mid-40s, sharp as broken glass, and more interested in truth than tact. "Let me guess," she said, flipping open her laptop. "Your dad thinks he can outmaneuver the clause. He thinks I won't use it." She looked at me over her glasses. "And are you?" I hesitated. Because here's the thing, I wasn't sure. I didn't want the house back out of spite, but I also couldn't stomach the idea of him lounging on the deck I bought, sipping coffee, making calls about his estate, as if I were just a blip in his rearview mirror. "You don't have to decide today," she said. "But if you do trigger the clause, you'll need to be ready for blowback." "Define blowback," she smirked. "Letters, legal pushback, family drama, maybe even a Facebook rant." "Already had that one," I muttered. "Troy posted a photo yesterday. Captioned, 'Family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up.'" Maya blinked. "Well, subtle." I forwarded her the post. She laughed for 5 full seconds. "Let me guess, #blessed in the comments. And #legacy built. Double quotes." She cracked her knuckles. "Let's build a counter legacy." We filed the reversion paperwork that afternoon. I signed my name like I was signing a farewell letter to my former self. The notification hit their inboxes within 24 hours. By day 2, I got my first message from my father. It was short. "Hold, what are you doing?" I didn't answer. Day 3, he called. I let it ring out. Day 4, my mother left a voicemail. "Noah, please call your father back. This has gone too far. Too far. As if writing your child out of your will for the sin of being independent wasn't far enough. As if accepting $1 million gift and then cutting the giver out of your legacy was normal family business. That night, I drove up again. This time, I parked. I walked to the porch. Knocked once. Troy opened the door, wine glass in hand, wearing a zip-up vest and a smirk that made my skin itch. "Look who decided to visit," he said. "I'm here to inform you the trust is dissolving," I said flatly. "You'll have 30 days to vacate." His smile faltered. "Excuse me." My father appeared behind him. "Noah," he said, voice tight. "Let's talk." I shook my head. "It's done." Then I turned, walked back to my car, and didn't look back. I'd given them a mountain. Now I was giving them a deadline. And for the first time in my life, The silence between us wasn't empty, it was mine. The first email came from my father's lawyer. It had the tone of someone trying very hard to sound unimpressed. Legally slayered over entitlement. The subject line read, Ray alleged breach of trust terms, in the body. A 4-paragraph argument that family dynamics are not cause for asset reversion, followed by a vague suggestion that my father's removal of me from the will had no bearing on the intended use of the property. They were already trying to reframe the story. According to them, the house wasn't a gift with meaning, it was a vacation home, a property transaction, a simple gesture from a grateful son with no strings attached. But I had the paperwork. The clause was ironclad. Continued equitable family occupancy meant inclusion, not exile. And my lawyer had built it airtight. This wasn't a casual clause. It was a boundary in legal form. We sent a reply that ended with, given that our client has been excluded from both the family estate and continued access to the property, we consider the trust terms violated. Vacate within 27 days or face court-ordered ejection. No smiley face. No love, no way. Just law. 2 days later, the campaign began. It started with a group text from my cousin Jestroy's sister. Hey, just heard about the Mountain House drama. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Maybe we could all talk before things go nuclear. Then an email from my mother, Noah. I wish you'd told us how you were feeling before taking such drastic steps. This has put your father in a very difficult position. Then Lily, my sister. The only person I thought might understand. I'm trying to stay neutral here, but this feels like a lot. Noah, you blindsided them. Blindsided them. They rewrote the will in secret. They sold my legacy like a garage sale. I was the one bleeding. And they were trying to make me apologize for getting cut. But it was Troy who finally made the mistake. He posted a photo of the house. My house. Caption, last trip before this state drama. Can't let bitterness ruin good views. Hashtag mountain life, hashtag family first, hashtag drama free zone. It went semi-viral. Some niche mountain cabin account reposted it. Comments rolled in. A few, oh my god, beautiful. And one that said, wait, didn't his cousin buy that place for their parents? That one stuck, because the commenter tagged me. That's when I decided to reply not to the tag, but to the moment. I opened notes on my phone and started writing. A letter, a statement, a confession. I posted it to Instagram. Black text on white background. No hashtags. No filters. I bought my parents a $1.2 million mountain home as a gift for their 40-year vow renewal. I didn't expect anything in return. Not a parade. Not a statue. Just a seat at the table. 2 weeks later, my father rewrote his will. I wasn't in it. When I found out, I didn't scream. I didn't burn the house down. I just enforced the clause we all agreed to, the one that says a family home is for family. If I don't belong in the family, I don't belong in the home. 30 days to vacate. I hope the mountain air was worth it. Then I logged off. 3 hours later, Maya called. Your post has 32,000 likes, she said, trying not to sound amused. Also, Troy just deleted his. I laughed for the first time in days. Let me guess, damage control. More like panic, she replied. Their lawyer's tone has softened. I checked my messages. 17 unread texts from Lily. 6 from my mom. 1 from my dad. The last one caught my eye. It was just 3 words. We need to talk. But I didn't want to talk, because I'd realized something. This wasn't just about the house. This was about finally refusing to be the good son, the reliable one, the donor of down payments and the absorber of silent disrespect. I'd spent 30 years trying to buy my way into a family that only wanted my generosity, not my presence. Now, for the first time, I wasn't knocking on the door. I was changing the locks. The next morning, Maya forwarded me an updated letter from their lawyer. Subject, Ray, trust resolution proposal. They were offering to voluntarily vacate the property within 21 days if no public statements were made moving forward. Maya asked, do you want to take the deal? I said no. I wanted them out, but I wanted people to see it. 2. It took them 9 days to move out. Not 30. Not 20-1.9. I think once the world saw their names attached to the kind of betrayal usually reserved for inheritance courtroom dramas, they decided discretion was the better part of entitlement. Public shame is a powerful solvent. It melts even the most hardened family pride. I didn't go up there during the move. Didn't need to, but Maya sent me confirmation photos, time-stamped by the local process server who checked the property post-departure. The house was empty, pristine, no graffiti, no broken things, just silence and cold walls. Except for one detail. They'd left something behind. On the kitchen counter, a manila envelope. Inside, a copy of the rewritten will. Not the original, the one that erased me. Annotated in red pen. A few scribbles. Some crossed out names, arrows and question marks, and a note, in my father's handwriting. I don't know how we got here. I thought I was protecting what mattered. Maybe I just forgot what that was. Dad, no signature. No apology. Just that. Maya asked if I wanted to respond. I didn't, because the truth is, it was too late. You can't burn a bridge by mailing back the ashes. Instead, I took a drive up alone the next weekend. It was my first time back since everything fell apart. I brought coffee and a blanket and parked in the circular drive where Troy's smug Lexus used to sit. The silence up there wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, fresh, the kind of quiet you earn after the noise dies down. I stepped inside. Everything looked and touched like a model home, but in the living room, on the old oak mantel, there was something that hadn't been there before. A photo frame. It was of me, young, maybe 10. Holding a fishing rod, grinning up at the camera, missing a front tooth. My father's hand was on my shoulder, his face halfway out of frame. I stared at it for a long time, then I picked it up, turned it over. On the back, written in shaky ink, biggest catch of the day. I put it back on the mantel, sat on the couch, and let myself feel the full weight of what I'd lost. Not the estate, not the inheritance, but the idea that maybe, one day, they'd love me the way I needed to be loved. That version of family was gone, but what replaced it? That was still unfolding. I stayed overnight at the house, slept in the guest room. Not the master. Some part of me didn't want to touch that space. I woke up at 5:42 a.m. to a mountain sunrise and the softest silence I've ever known. No buzzing phones, no legal threads, just orange light spilling across hardwood floors. I brewed coffee, sat on the deck, watched a squirrel attempt parkour off the railing, laughed out loud, alone, free. That was the moment I decided what came next. I wasn't going to sell the house. I wasn't going to flip it or rent it or urban it to influencers looking for a weekend of staged authenticity. I was going to keep it, but not for them, for people like me. Within a month, I'd filed paperwork to convert the mountain estate into a private retreat, a nonprofit, a recovery and reset space for estranged adults navigating family trauma, grief, and estrangement. I called it Second Light, because that's what it gave me. Not closure, not justice, but light. After all the darkness, the first retreat weekend was booked 6 months out. I had an application waitlist before I even finished furnishing the bedrooms. Turns out, there are a lot more of us than I thought. Quiet givers, silent shoulders, the ones who carry everything but are never invited to rest. The house my father tried to write me out of became a sanctuary for the exact kind of people he'd never understand. And that was better than any inheritance. But of course, it didn't end there. One Sunday afternoon, I was tidying the entry hall when I heard tires on gravel. A silver SUV, California plates, parked awkwardly in the drive. I knew that shape, that hesitation. Lily stepped out, sunglasses perched on her head, her expression somewhere between guilt and grief. I opened the door before she could knock. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Can I come in?" I nodded, stepped aside. She entered like the place might shatter if she moved too fast. "This place is beautiful," she said softly. "Thanks," I replied. "It wasn't always." She nodded slowly. "I saw the retreat announcement online. Didn't realize it was this house until someone forwarded me your post. You here as a guest?" "No," she hesitated. "I'm here as your sister." That one hurt more than I thought it would. I didn't reply. She turned toward the mantel, picked up the fishing photo. "You remember this day?" I shook my head. "I remember thinking he was proud of me." She turned back to me. "He was. He just didn't know how to show it." "That's not an excuse." "No," she said quietly. "It's not." She stepped closer. "I'm not here to defend them. I'm here because I should have said something. When you told me what happened, when they rewrote the will, I should have stood up for you. Why didn't you? She blinked. I was scared. Of rocking the boat. Of becoming the next one they cut off. I nodded. That, at least, I understood. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. Mom's handwriting, she said. It's for you. She wrote it after they moved out. I didn't take it. Do I need to read it? I asked. She shook her head. Only if you want to. We stood there for a moment. Then I said, want some coffee? She smiled, watery and small. Yeah, I'd like that. I turned toward the kitchen, poured 2 mugs, and for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt like healing. We sat on the deck, just me and Lily, sipping coffee as the pines whispered to each other like old friends. The mountain air had that strange kind of silence that fills your ears instead of empties them. It was late afternoon golden hour, the part of the day where truth feels safest. So, she said, tracing the rim of her mug with one finger, what happens now? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I watched a bluebird hop along the railing like it was debating whether to trust me. I couldn't blame it. You mean with Mom and Dad? I finally asked. I mean, all of it, she replied. The will, the house, the fact that we all pretended nothing happened while you got erased like a typo. That last part hit harder than I wanted. I turned to her. Did they ever talk about it after? She gave me a long, heavy look. No, not once. Dad said you were handling things childishly. Mom cried every time your name came up. Troy called you bitter, which, coming from the human embodiment of a tax deduction, felt rich. That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd enough to pierce the armor. Do they know about the retreat? I asked. They do now, she said. I showed them the site. Dad said, so he's turning it into a therapy commune. Technically, it's a nonprofit mental health and rest center, I said. But yeah, let's go with therapy commune. She smiled into her cup, then she set it down, reached into her bag, and handed me the envelope again. You should read it. I hesitated, then took it. My mother's handwriting was as familiar as my own, soft loops, delicate, overly careful. Like she thought if her letters were tidy enough, they could smooth over the truth. I opened it. Read silently. No, I know you may never read this. I wouldn't blame you. I wasn't brave when you needed me to be. I stood behind your father, even when I knew you were right. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but really, I was keeping my comfort. I saw the clothes. I saw the house slip away. But what hurt me most wasn't losing the home. It was realizing I never earned what you gave us in the first place. You always wanted love, not leverage. And we gave you paperwork. I am sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I wanted you to know, I see it now. Whatever you do with this place, I hope it brings you the family you deserved. Love always. Mommy folded the letter. Didn't cry. Didn't speak. Just breathed. Lily didn't push. We sat there for a while, watching the sun tiptoe behind the ridge. Then she asked, do you want me to leave? I looked at her. No, I said. But you'll need to help with the dishes. She grinned. God, that's how I know you're still mad. That night, we cooked. Just like we used to, back when we were kids and our parents were too busy arguing about lawn care or golf tournaments or anything but how we actually felt. We made spaghetti with garlic bread, burned the first batch, laughed so hard we forgot what we were grieving. She stayed the night in the guest room. The next morning, I gave her a tour of the retreat space in progress, the meditation room. The old office I'd turned into a small library. The room where people left notes for loved ones they hadn't spoken to in years. The wall where they pinned things they needed to let go of. Think you'll ever let go of them? She asked gently. I don't know, I said. But I'm done waiting for them to hold me the way I needed. We hugged at her car. Not the casual sibling squeeze. The real kind. The we survived the same fire kind. Before she pulled out of the drive, she said, you know, this place. It doesn't just heal guests. It's healing you too. I didn't deny it. A week later, I held the first group session for the inaugural retreat. 12 guests. 12 stories that mirrored mine in strange, heartbreaking, funny ways. One woman had been written out of her mother's will for marrying beneath her. A man was ostracized by his siblings after coming out. A quiet teenage girl had shown up after being disinvited from Christmas for calling out abuse. They all had their reasons. But the feelings, they were eerily similar. Shame, anger, grief, and then something else. Hope. I opened the session by saying, I bought this house to bring my family together. I lost that family. But maybe I didn't lose everything. Maybe I just hadn't found the right people yet. A few of them cried. One man laughed and said, So, is this a cult, or what? We all laughed. And just like that, it became ours. A year later, the retreat is fully booked 3 months in advance. We've had artists, social workers, burned-out caretakers, estranged adult children, and even one disillusioned inheritance lawyer looking for meaning. The house is alive now. Not with my parents' legacy, but with mine. Sometimes, I still get texts from my father. He never mentions the house. Just sends things like hope you're doing well or saw a hawk today, made me think of you. I don't block him. But I don't reply either, because forgiveness isn't always a reunion. Sometimes it's just choosing peace over permission. I don't know if they'll ever really understand what they lost, but I know what I found. Not just a house, but a life I built with no blueprint, no inheritance, and no applause. Only love, real, earned, messy love, from people who didn't write me into a will but walked through my door and chose me anyway.